My name is Kristen Engelhardt. I'm our SVP of Community and Learning here at Automation Anywhere, which means I'm accountable to all of you and our customers and partners around the world, that you have the training, the tools, the peer programs and resources you need to thrive on the Automation Success Platform. So if you don't have those things, myself and my team are accountable. And Sentil, come on up and grab a chair. And before we get started on our conversation with all of these awesome panelists, what's more exciting than a safe harbor, right? Please make investment decisions based on currently available technology. I think that covers everything. Okay. So Mihir and Audie were both talking about our system of work earlier this morning. And this is incredibly powerful technology. But what we all found on the community and learning team traveling around the world, literally, and meeting with so many of you was, as program leaders, driving automation transformation through your organizations, you are not just building a bot or leveraging a piece of the Automation Success Platform, but you're building a program. You're building a strategy for growth. And that is a whole different muscle and movement than just using the technology. So let's spend a moment on how these amazing customers, I'm going to introduce in just a moment, are scaling across the Automation Success Platform with the Pathfinder program. And I think now is a great time to just do quick introductions. So Sentil, starting with you, and we'll pass the mic. Will you just say your name, role, and company?
My name is Sentil Maran. I work for GM Financial. My role is Assistant VP. I lead the RPA development team. I have a team of developers, BSAs, platform admins supporting the program. With that, I'll pass it on to you.
Michal Rubel from Amkor Technology in Tempe, Arizona, manager of the transformation team there.
My name is Rick Weld. I'm with Frost National Bank out of San Antonio, and I'm the RPA product owner for our group.
And I am Jason Woodford. I am the Director of Enterprise Automation at Accentcare, so just managing all the day-to-day enterprise automation activities.
All right, now I'm going to sit down so I have my microphone. This is a stellar group of people, and I'd be remiss if I didn't point out one other person who's going to kill me, Ricardo, who has driven so many of these Pathfinder workshops with many of these customers and customers across the US, and is really helping us scale that program. So if you have questions about the program after, talk to our customers, but also please talk to Ricardo. Okay, so we went through the introductions. We know who these amazing leaders are. And just a quick beat on the Pathfinder program. I mentioned that so many of you had told us, frankly, in no uncertain terms, I need more help in a different way. And what I'm trying to do is punch through to scale in a few different areas. And we heard that so many times that we created, together with our customers, the Pathfinder program. Regardless of where you are in your growth, whether you're just starting out and you want to focus on quick start success, mission 1, or you're ready for generative AI and you're hyperscaling at mission 7 or anywhere in between, the Pathfinder program packages literally 20 years of expertise from our customers, our community, Automation Anywhere, our partners, and we have brought it live to over 40 Fortune 500 customers around the world, including this great group of folks. Now, prior to Pathfinder, right, this is our first question for the group. It's a commitment. You know, you guys sat down with your teams and you invested an entire day in learning best practices. You selected your missions for scale. We do the one-day workshop. We share all the best practices. And then we walk away with a 90-day action plan for growth. And then you work the plan, right? And many of you are still working the plan. So before participating in the workshop, there was always like a K-list, right? A reason why you said, you know what, let's gather and do this. And there's some challenges we think we want to tackle. We're going to commit the time. So, I don't know, Jason, all the way at the end of the table, let's start with you. Can you share with the group sort of where you were at the moment that you decided to sit down and tackle a Pathfinder workshop?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say prior to going into Pathfinder, we knew that we had gaps, but we didn't know exactly what those gaps were. We weren't mature enough to know what we didn't know, basically. So actually, we had started with a couple automations, we had started growing, and it was a good opportunity to kind of step back with the Pathfinder assessment and say, okay, me and the team, like, let's take this assessment and let's figure out where we are, because there were certain areas that we thought we were really mature in that after taking the assessment, it turned out we were kind of green in, actually. And there were other areas where we thought we were pretty green that we were actually doing pretty well in. So it was just really enlightening to be able to shine light on the areas where we wouldn't have ever even known that we weren't excelling at. That's what I would say to start.
I think that Jason, is something, I'm sorry, I'm leaning into the microphone, that we hear a lot is, wow, when I took this assessment, which is the first hour of every workshop, I didn't realize how strong we were in some areas, and then there were some ahas. Senthil, you too, what were some ahas from your assessment? Sorry, leaning in again. What were some ahas from your assessment and some of the catalysts for jumping into Pathfinder?
So one of the first feedback I gave to my development manager was, I wish we had done this Pathfinder session maybe in the first year of the program. So being in the program for like 3 years, we never paused to kind of gauge where we are, never had an opportunity to have an holistic evaluation of the program till Pathfinder. And the first hour that she mentioned is where we did that. There were like 5 key areas, which is the program, the people, the pipeline, the production, and promotion. Those were the areas that the Automation Anywhere folks took us through in the first hour and made us do a self-scoring. And that kind of gave us like a baseline where we are. And this is something that from which we realized that we are probably in the accelerate stage of the program. There's so much we can do to go to the scale, which is the high end of this program. And it's been a great self-evaluation opportunity for me.
Okay, thank you. So how has, let's talk about some transitions, right? There's never a perfect time to sit down as a team and conduct these assessments and really dig in and say, where do we want to go? Where do we want to grow? A couple of you are doing, are in the midst of some actually really interesting transitions. Michal, you are making a transition. Rick, you as well. Sometimes you're transitioning from one platform to another, right? A different vendor. And sometimes you all are transitioning from like the A360 migration from on-prem to cloud, right? These are probably the 2 most common migrations. And for those of you who are thinking, is this a good time for me to dig in on our program and our health? Michal, what can you share about the transition you were in and what you learned?
Sure. So we've been transitioning from Blue Prism to Automation Anywhere. And we definitely wanted to take advantage of introducing a new tool, evaluating our old processes. So our whole strategy was to focus on governance and doing it right this time around. So in our initial evaluation, we had close to 100 processes and found that 25% of those didn't need to be migrated. So with that coming to light, we wanted to make sure we focused on governance, working toward a federated model eventually, and working on our pipeline.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry, who here doesn't have a huge backlog and realize that maybe at least 25% of the processes didn't necessarily need to be automated, right? That's probably not uncommon. A completely different kind of transition. So Rick, what were you guys in the midst of, and why did you decide to choose Pathfinder?
Yeah, so currently we are in the process of migrating from V11 to A360. And we decided to go through this program in the summer when we were just getting kind of doing our preliminary stuff to get ready for the migration, because we wanted to get a baseline of where our program was today and kind of, to Jason's point, understand what we didn't know, where we needed to improve, once we got onto the new platform. So we felt it was a great time to step back, assess everything, and kind of put plans ahead on the areas that we needed to improve once we completed the migration.
So you're ready to get started right
Hit the
out of
ground
the
running.
gate. Right on. Okay, so we've heard from these leaders, all of you, sort of a little bit of the catalyst for change, or where you were when you embarked on your workshop, and the assessment, right? And we actually heard from you guys, like, this really helps an organization understand where we are, where we're actually stronger, where we may be weaker. I hear a lot of times, including from all these leaders, that this allows us actually to have a different conversation with our executive team. Like, we're not just running an automation program in a vacuum, but we are understanding where we are against our peers. So that's incredibly valuable. But once you do your assessment, then you select your missions, right? And so the fun fact about all of these amazing leaders is you all chose the same missions, which, if anyone was in the previous Pathfinder session, almost every one of our customers chooses some version of the similar missions around promotion and engagement, how to fine-tune the production life cycle, and how to optimize the ideation pipeline. And you guys are no different, right? So understanding that, I don't know, Jason, let's pick on you. Will you tell us a little bit about, as you're going through your missions that day, there's all these conversations you wouldn't normally have, and there's probably some aha moments. What were a couple of them that kind of blew the team's mind?
Yeah, for sure. So when we started, we thought, we're just gonna sling some bots, right? We're gonna make automations and we're gonna crush it, which is really a couple of steps down. So I think our first biggest aha moment was the value of promotion and marketing, because we had basically initially relied on people coming to us and saying, hey, we have this process, can you help us automate? And that happened a little bit, and we had a smaller pipeline, but really once we changed the mindset to showcasing our successes and our capabilities, people came out of like the woodwork to ask for our help. So that was one big aha. I think another one was probably the benefit of kind of reusable assets, whether that's like form documentation, like there's STD starter templates, whether it's making task bots to handle audit logging, anything that you can do to allow the developers to focus on just solving the core problem rather than like reinventing those patterns that you're going to do over and over again. That was really big. That saved so much time. And then, gosh, if I had to say a third one, it was probably how to better engage QA. When we initially started the RPA program, we had worked with our QA team to make them responsible for execution and real-time monitoring of the bots to QA it. That was actually causing more problems than it was helping. But after talking to the Pathfinder group and the Pathfinder community, they kind of pointed us in the right direction of black box testing and an appropriate way that we could leverage QA without overdoing it. So those are the three big ahas I would say we had.
Those are some pretty big ahas.
They were.
But I like what you said, Jason, about, we were in a stage where people were coming to us, and then, every organization plateaus. But you pivoted to engaging your audiences, and they're coming out of the woodwork. And I find over and over, those of us who are driving technology-based transformations, we're pretty excellent at running a program, right? We're pretty excellent at driving technology changes, but we don't wake up every day and say, I am a chief marketing officer, right? That is just not a comfort zone for so many of us. So that's a really interesting aha. Senthil, you had a couple of ahas as you were working your missions. What do you want to share?
Yeah, for me, the one thing the Pathfinder really helped was how we can demonstrate value to the business. Prior to Pathfinder, I think we used to demonstrate value primarily by capacity release, showing them how many bots we delivered, how many man hours we saved. But then in the Pathfinder, we realized there's so many other ways also we can demonstrate value. We can demonstrate value through productivity, cash flow, accuracy, assurance, user experience. There's different ways in which we can show how this program is very valuable to the business. And that was my key learning from the Pathfinder.
And, you know, many of us, when we start out building our programs, we measure what's easiest, right? Like the number of automations, the number of processes. These are things that are right in front of us and easy to measure. But back to promoting your program and engaging your stakeholders, what does that really tell you, right? I deployed 60 bots, you know, awesome, but what does that mean for the business? So I like the fact that you are thinking what is important to the company as far as managing cash better or improving the customer experience. And so that I think is one of the most meaningful ahas that we hear universally and obviously from you, Senthil. Okay, so everyone chose some similar missions. Mission 2, again, was about promotion and engagement, and I just want to take a deep dive on that again because it's so outside of our normal comfort zones, right? So, Michal, we haven't heard enough from you. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the promotion takeaways and what you're working on in your 90-day plan?
So for us, it's a big focus on governance again, just to kind of build that trust again with our factories. So we have factories in multiple countries around the world. They were all working on their own developments for automation, but we want to make sure that we built that center of excellence team, had a solid governance put together, and that we communicated that out to the factories to encourage them to use this new tool with confidence. So part of that 90-day action plan was to come up with that strategy and communication to make that work for all the factories.
So trust and governance, big theme for all of us, especially as we branch into generative AI. I think, Michal, what's powerful about you is you recognize that your executive team had concerns, right? Trust issues.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Where did that come from? Were they like, Michal, you screwed up, we don't trust you? Or was it something a little bit more nuanced?
No, I think just with Blue Prism, it was difficult to maintain. Once people put a process into place, you become dependent on that process. So if you have a regular occurrence of processes coming on board, not being able to keep them going, that might keep ideas from coming forward. So we wanted to make sure to stop that mind or that train of thought and inspire confidence for the new process.
Okay, excellent points, and that's really knowing your audience. Jason, you actually engaged some new business units in your promotion efforts, and you're in the middle of that. What can you share?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that we did was we kind of brought the concept of a mega sprint to certain functional areas. What we did was we basically started out with finance because we hadn't initially made any inroads into finance. And so what we did was we started at the top of the food chain on finance, and we got buy-in from the CFO, and we said, hey, we've got an automation team that has licenses, they have capacity, they can help you. If you're all in, we can be all in for 90 days too. And what we'll do is we'll get together, we'll have a whole day session where we talk through the pain points, really just dredge out everything. And then we basically identified the areas where we felt like automation could bring the most value to that business unit. And then we basically just worked down them, like pretty exclusively focused on finance for the next 90 days. We had regularly scheduled touch points, and then we actually finally held a 90-day readout with that finance executive, basically highlighting all the work we had done, what was still in the hopper, and the value that we had achieved. And that was super successful. So we're actually going to repeat that over. We actually started another one for the HR business unit as well, and that's kind of one of our plans right now is to specifically engage those specific functional areas.
Okay. Congrats on that growth. That's
Thank you.
awesome. Let's take another deep dive on Mission 3. Okay, you guys are like, well, what's Mission 3, Kristen? And that's really about fine-tuning your production and delivery process. And so many of you excel here. In fact, when we did our maturity benchmark, which, by the way, you can find, Pathfinder Mission Control, this was actually an area where universally was probably scored the highest, but everyone still had gaps in where they wanted to be with their production processes. So, Rick, we have not heard enough from you. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the takeaways on your action plan when you were going through the best practices for production and delivery?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that really surprised us was our engagement and people scores were really higher than most of the companies in our vertical. But one of the things that kind of validated us in going through the Pathfinder program was our production score was a little lower than what we wanted. But we knew this, kind of had a feeling going in, and so it kind of validated what we needed to do for when we get into the new world of the A360 and building up our reusable code libraries, shoring up our STD templates, and just kind of our automated documentation process, and kind of standardizing those moving forward.
Okay. Yeah, STDs is not something you necessarily are always thinking about, and I really appreciated about that as one of your ahas is this is an area where we can really tune things up. Okay, Jason, how about you? What did you take away on your 90-day plan here?
Gosh, for Mission 3 productionization, I mean, what I would say is I've told this story a couple times, and I think, at the risk of burying my soul, our automation program was being successful through sheer force of will on the developers' focus. Everybody was working really hard. Everybody cared greatly about pushing out good code and making sure that everything worked. And we were doing great, which is awesome. It's just not a very long-term, tenable solution relying on people to give 110% every single day. Yeah. I hope that we can do that, but really what we did was we spent a lot of time focusing on the documentations and pulling all that information out of developers' heads and putting it into, we've actually been leveraging the ServiceNow knowledge base, where we've been putting runbooks, PDDs, SDDs, basically any sort of supplemental documentation for productionization into that repo. So that way, if a new person comes on and they need to do prod support, they've got a searchable repo available where they can kind of understand the high points, what the input file is, where the be on the lookouts might be. So I would say that was the biggest shift we made in Mission 3, was doing things with purpose repeatably rather than just happening to get it right on the first time.
And these are such important principles of scale, doing things intentionally with purpose and repeatable. And we hear that consistently. Appreciate the candor, but I think you probably have a lot of shared compatriots here in the audience on that. Okay, there's another mission you all chose, Mission 5, and this was really around your pipeline. You wanted to improve maybe the quality or value of ideas coming in. Maybe you wanted to improve how you evaluated, scored, and calculated them. Maybe you wanted to improve how you were engaging with your stakeholders on your pipeline to fine-tune that. So there's a couple of you that have done some really interesting things. Michal, how about back to you? What are some of the steps you've taken or are prioritizing to optimize your pipeline since the workshop?
One of the steps we wanted to focus on was to create a demand intake form and process to kind of deal with any new ideas that came up. We didn't want to end up in the same boat that we were in before, where any automation idea came on, as long as the manager rubber stamped it, it went through. We just wanted to make sure everything that was coming through was of value. So we wanted to make sure that we could develop a template that was good internationally across all our factories. Some of our processes span multiple countries, our accounting, finance processes, for example. So we wanted to make sure all that was in place. And at the same time, we wanted to make sure not to stymie any progress. So as our focus right now is migration, we want to make sure that that momentum keeps going so that we keep ideas coming through. So. Okay.
And that new intake process, I think, is probably going to be pretty valuable. Again, finish your migration, ready to grease the skids there. Senthil, now you have done some really interesting things as GM Financial is actually ready to explore generative AI. And so you're pretty aggressive there with your team. How have you been exploring those use cases with some of the best practices around pipeline?
Some of the use cases that we found out from the sessions that we had with Automation Anywhere were like one use case was about finding fraud in the documents that we handle. Automation Anywhere is now doing a POC for us to be able to find fraud. Then there's these other use cases about a corporate assistant that all employees within GM Financial can go into the teams and ask various policy questions and things to the chatbot. So that's another use case that we came across from our interaction with our Automation Anywhere partners. And finally, there was about this Copilot, where we are able to embed a custom region into applications that don't have Gen AI, but through this embedded region, we are able to bring in Gen AI to those legacy applications. So some of the two applications that we have currently been able to embed a custom region, one is the Teams, another one is ServiceNow. Both are right now in the POC stage, but we hope to be able to get them productionalized pretty soon.
So I think this is so interesting how, again, these different organizations might choose the exact same mission, but have very different outcomes based on where they are as an organization. So Michal, you were able to really fine-tune the intake, whereas Sentil, you cracked open the use case pipeline, right, on Gen AI. Rick, I want to touch for a moment on you. You tackled, I think, was it a new intake form when you were on this mission?
Right. So our intake process was, as probably some of y'all are in the same boat, was either word of mouth or an email or Teams chat, that, hey, we need a new bot. So earlier this year, we standardized and launched a intake process through our company-wide ticketing system, ServiceNow, and we developed specific questions to proactively start capturing information about business justification, metrics, and more so just to get the wheels turning with the business stakeholders. So when they're putting their request in for new bots or enhancements to bots, they've already been asked this on the front end. So by the time we come around to our discovery call with them, we can really dive into their business needs, their justifications, their pain points, help really understand their driver behind automation and their return of investment for themselves as well, to help them flesh that out as well. And since we've implemented that, we've seen not only an increase in volume, but also quality of requests that have come in for new bots or major enhancements to existing bots.
So I think that last point, Rick, is so important. Volume is great, but quality is key, right? I think everyone can see some nodding heads there. So we touched on this already, and thank you for actually being so prescient and answering this question. Mission 7 is our brand new mission for hyperscale. It's how to get started with generative AI. And I'm really impressed, Sentil, with what GM Financial is doing. I think that one of the key pieces of the mission execution plan here for how to get started is the concept of that proof of concept, and it's a great place to start. You highlighted a couple of the use cases you're going to tackle. Will you just share a little bit more about your first POC and sort of who's involved and who are you working with from Automation Anywhere?
So some of the POCs that I mentioned, like the corporate assistant, or adding the Gen AI capability through Copilot to various applications like Teams and ServiceNow, and finally the one that came in recently was finding fraud in documents, in contract documents. So there are two approaches that we are looking at. One is either using Azure OpenAI as our LLM platform, or using Google Vertex. I know Automation Anywhere, a lot of the POCs that they have done internally, they have used Google Vertex, and that's kind of going to influence the direction that we take. For us right now, it's deciding between these two. LLM solutions is where we are right now. We are in a holding stage, and once the senior leadership within GM Financial makes the direction towards either going towards Azure OpenAI or Google Vertex, I think these POCs will be able to move forward and deliver value to the company.
And it's good that you bring up the LLM choice. It's something everyone has to make, right? And it's sort of like, we're going to be pioneers here in this area. Which direction do we go? So I think one of the most important things is, and Sentinel, you referenced this a little bit, and you heard this from Audie this morning, we're really agnostic on the vendor. We are supporting your entire application estate, if you will. And so we're really excited to see the outcome of that. And I know people are going to probably hound you with questions in the future on that. Okay, so we talked about reasons for engaging in a Pathfinder workshop, the challenges you want to solve, the missions chosen, self-assessing your program against your peers, and then, of course, gleaning the best practices, the aha moments. The biggest thing that happens, though, is the outcome, right? Yes, teams spend a whole day in the workshop, but it's the 90 days that follow that's so important. And we divide our action plans into 30, 60, and 90 days. It's our customers who decide what they're going to put on the action plan, so everyone is different and unique. Sometimes you create your action plan. I know a couple of you, and you're like, and now we're going to pause on that, get through a migration, pick it back up. And some of you jump in the very next day, right? I want to spend just a couple of moments on some of the top priorities and achievements so far. Sentinel, you talked about your POCs. Michal, a couple of key priorities for your action plan. What do you want to share?
Sure. So as I mentioned before, governance being top importance for us, we've really been focused on putting that document together, getting our executives to kind of look that over, put their stamp of approval on it, and kind of figure out that plan to get that out to the company worldwide. So that was top of the priority list for us. So we have accomplished at least a very good first draft that everybody's on board with. It's kind of a working document that everybody kind of keeps going with, but at least we have something in place that can be communicated out to all the other leaders out there for our automation team, as well as the demand intake form that's been well established now and should be able to work for all the factories worldwide. So
that's awesome.
Yep.
Jason, you got a couple of priorities on your action plan. I know around upskilling and metrics. What do you want to share?
Yeah, for sure. So there were a couple really tactical things that we had on our action plan. Some of the things like I talked about, like for example, getting all of our documentation cleaned up. That was one of the things on our action plan. Making a couple reusable task bots was also something on our action plan. That's been on our side. There were a couple, much larger, kind of crazier ideas we had. So I work in a healthcare setting, and one of the 90-day ones that we had talked about was partnering with Automation Anywhere to kind of do like a ride-along with a clinician, like a day in the life of a clinician. Especially with all the generative AI stuff coming out, we feel like there is a huge untapped automation potential in the healthcare space, and really wanted to see if we could leverage, some of Automation Anywhere's best-in-class insights. So those are a couple of things that are on the action plan. Like you say, also upskilling. We have a mix of kind of professional developers as well as smart people from the org who we have picked to be developers, so trying to get everybody upskilled through AAI University, take the certifications and everything. Those are kind of four of the major themes that we had in the action plan.
It's pretty ambitious.
It is an ambitious plan.
Congratulations, though. All right. We just covered upskilling, so you're right ahead. And let's just spend one more moment on metrics. And in our previous Pathfinder session, we talked about the importance of looking at metrics in sort of three different levels. Obviously, there's the transactional metrics, right? Operational metrics of how your bots are running and their performance and uptime. And then, of course, we talked about, Sentinel, you were sharing the business value metrics. What is important to the executive team? Can I just get a hand raise of just someone who wants to share where you are with your metrics now? Who wants to share? Jason, go for it.
I mean, so not to restate what you basically just said, but we have kind of taken Automation Anywhere's best practices and gone with that. So from a transactional level, what we do is every week we produce a KPI spreadsheet, and that is either the number of widgets that have been processed through an automation or a success rate, basically what was able to be automated versus what needs to be handled manually. What we've done is we've kind of taken statistical process controls and laid that on top so that we can at a glance see what is out of control. For example, if something normally does 500 widgets a week, in 1 week it's at 200, that's maybe cause for concern. So we do a lot of those sort of operational KPIs. We also monthly, like you say, we put out number of ideas generated over the last 30, 60, 90. What are the value of those ideas? Are we getting good representation from all of our business areas, or is it pretty heavily stacked towards one? That sort of program recap of ideas delivery, just at a pulled up level. And then the thing that I do last is once yearly, I will kind of provide a true ROI, I guess I'd call it. Licenses plus staff cost plus training, all of that compared against the actual real cost savings that we have gotten approved through finance, and just kind of providing that total percent ROI that the enterprise automation team is creating. Those are the 3 levels we're reporting at today.
Okay. It's pretty rigorous. Okay.
I can add just really
Yeah,
quick.
please
So
do.
we had the operational metrics in place for the most part, but I think we're able to focus on those. But just to add on to what you were saying, we didn't have that ROA metric for evaluating our processes before the whole Pathfinder workshop. So I think that's a big important metric that we're now focusing on, and we'll keep an eye on going forward. So.
Okay, excellent. Now we're at, oh yeah, do we have one more? Or? Oh, Rick, please go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the things that came from our session was the operational metrics and all those things as well. We were reporting on those, but for us, because we're a bank, there's a lot of compliance and security and penalties that can be associated with mess ups or missing information or late information. So we start reporting on those avoidances to go along with the cost savings as well too. So.
Okay, and error avoidance is not necessarily something that is top of mind, but when we have those conversations, there is, like with Rick's team, an aha moment, right? Where you're like, you know what, this would actually be really, really valuable to tackle. So we've talked through why you decided to tackle a Pathfinder program, what you were trying to accomplish, how you assessed yourselves, your mission selection, best practices, and working the plan. We're going to switch to Q&A in just a moment, but I have to say that this is all now available live. Today, you heard Audie announce this at Pathfinder Mission Control. You can take the self-assessment with your team. You can pick your mission or missions for scale. All of the best practices are there, and you can build your action plan with the same exact resources that we've done live with all of these folks. So check it out, you guys. And in addition to the theme of upskilling, we also have now Pathfinder Academy, 40 brand new, completely free digital courses. Who hasn't said, I want more of those Micah videos? I hear that when I travel around. So Micah and his team built out this entire program, and I really want to make sure you guys know that those resources are live today at your fingertips. It's a great thing to do with your team to figure out what are we missing, what are our gaps, where are we doing really well, where do we want to break through, and have some of the same results that you're hearing from these leaders. So with that in mind, the best part is the Q&A. I know this group has got to have some questions for this team. Kate, can I put you on the spot as far as a microphone runner? And do we just have the one microphone, folks? Okay. And then we'll just be creative. You guys, raise your hand. Who has a question?
So I'm kind of curious on staffing. We're a really, really lean organization. We started our RPA journey in 2020, late, and it's really, I have a team lead and a developer, and we just had our senior developer team lead leave us for another position. So we rely heavily on offshore. We don't really have a COE. We're really focused on development, and operational support is where we're really hurting right now. So I'm curious how you guys are staffed offshore permanent employees and what that looks like. Because we find it really challenging to do a lot of this because we don't have a lot of resources to do it. So.
Okay, I know some of you guys have some thoughts to share here. Do you want to just, yeah, thank you, bring the microphone. Who wants to go first? It's a great question.
So we have more people on site than offshore, but offshore has been very critical for our production support. They come in like 4 or 5 in the morning for us, and they monitor to make sure all our bots are running up and fine. Even last week, they identified a production outage early that got us our admins involved right away, and we were able to resolve that pretty quickly. So having that offshore component has made it, we are able to provide a longer window of support. And then also, we have it also depends on the roles. For example, a BSA role is something that we only have on-site team members. We don't have any offshore. That is a role that needs to work closely with the business, so we felt that needs to be on-site. And we have our platform admins. Both our platform admins are on-site right now, but there is some thought process of how we could bring that skill set offshore as well. So depending on the role, I think you might want to, like, for example, if it's like production support, or if they're working on a less critical bot, that something can be done offshore. But if it's a critical role like platform admin, or something they're working on a high ROI automation, I think you would want to do it on site.
Did any of you guys start out the way this gentleman did, with like maybe just one developer, or yeah, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take the mic. So. I will say broadly, I feel your pain. I have a extremely lean team as well. So currently, I have 2 developers and 1 BA. I mean, so I get my hands dirty quite a bit as well. We had engaged some offshore production support, I will say, at the end of last year, and we just weren't able to find the right fit. It turned out most of our bots go idle overnight, and so hiring offshore contractors to watch the bots and provide prod support overnight isn't actually super effective in my use case. So I would say kind of just be aware of when you might need additional support. The thing I'm trying to do with my management this year going into 24 is basically trying to, as we identify use cases, trying to build in like a teeny bit of prod support for that use case, you know? So, hey, like if you want to get like the $60,000 ROI, it's going to come with a $10,000 offshore resource ask. But I mean, I feel your pain. It's a struggle with a small team. So me and the two developers, like we each take a week of production support right now, and we do that like 24/7. So it's not totally solved for on my side.
Okay.
Yeah, we would look to do something similar with offshore, but your point of when bots are running, that's a good.
Yeah.
Hadn't even thought about that. But we have BAs that typically we staff BAs, and they just decided to learn RPA, so they're also doing development work. But we staff them. We want them, the BAs, working with the business, working for us, and then everything else, if we can, we want to try and offshore.
So I sense bigger conversation after this session. We might have time for, I think, 1 or 2 more questions. Do we have a hand? We have a hand right here. This lady with the cool red glasses.
I'm just interested in, I think it was Jason or one of you said something about cleaning up your documentation. So our teams are lean, same way, and we're healthcare. What level of documentation do you produce? And is it the tech side, or is it like your BAs are doing in discovery, doing a full kind of PDD? What does that look like for you guys?
I think it was Jason again. Sorry.
So I'll take a crack at this. So what we have for PDDs are pretty full business requirement spec, just like what a human SOP would be. What we have started doing is we've created these like 1-page run books, and they're basically everything that you would need to know about a bot's operational running from a tech side. Like it's going to run a report on this machine, and it's going to drop that report into this folder, and that's when another bot kicks off, and it's going to do processing on a local computer until the bot finishes, at which point it's going to write it out to a database, kind of like a cliff notes of the automation. So we've got PDDs, hyper detailed, SDDs, which are kind of like the high level conceptual steps that the bot is going to take, and then those 1-page run books to kind of like bridge the day-to-day running of it, I would say. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so
So PDDs are the business process. The SDDs are the technical design. Yeah, yep, like we're going to get the file and then we're going to process it and then we're going to output it. Yep, exactly.
Okay, so a tiered system. Excellent. Okay, I think we can do one more question, if we have one. Do we have one more question? Okay. All right. Oh, yes, sir.
You guys talked about business intake forms. And so we actually had business intake forms initially, and we found the business didn't want to take the time to actually fill them out. So we actually deterred them from creating or coming to us to create bots. So I don't know how have you automated that process to make it easier for them to create these intake forms?
Rick or Mihal, I know each of you are. Well, I think let's have Mihal have a chance first. I think you wanted to say something.
Just for myself, really quickly, we were meeting with the businesses to start with, and that's kind of our approach to start with, is to kind of take that burden off of them. So I'm sitting there with the business owners and filling out the form, making the questions simple and translating to start with. So I think that's our approach to start with, is to take the burden off of them, setting up meetings, especially if it's a complicated process, right? And then eventually I think we'll try to come up with either a simplified form or something with all the definitions there and explain it to everyone. So at least that's our game plan for now.
And Rick?
So I got a two-part answer to this. One, we were meeting with the business before, and basically what I did was I took some of the questions that we would ask in those discovery calls or those discovery meetings, and I embedded them into the intake form for the reason of when we start talking and meeting with them, it's not the first time they're asking the questions. So some of the metrics, hey, how many times a day does this process run? How many transactions does this run? How many people are working on this? What is the start to stop time for a single transaction? It wasn't the first time they were hearing this, and so if they needed to go back and think or research or talk to it, they could come to the discovery meeting a little bit more informed. And to your other point, if they don't have time to answer a form or fill out an intake form, how much time are they going to have to work with you to document their process step by step? And then you can turn it back to them and say, hey, well, this obviously is probably not a priority for you. So that was our approach. And
Excellent. You guys, I know we could keep talking. We're going to lose the room to the next session. Can we please thank all of our panelists here? Thank all of you. Go check out Mission Control. You can start gaining the same insights today. And check out Pathfinder Academy. Thank you, everyone.